Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Beyondich,
Present.
Paulson,
Here.
Cuffey.
Present. Thank you. We have a full agenda today. We have on the line, I think, also is our Fire Chief Alan Lewis, and who else is on the line? And Matt Reed, our from SCH, our engineer of record. We have in the audience today some presenters, along with our city administrator Britt C. Bennis, our city attorney Brian Lindsay, and our library director and his public park and rec director, and then the two presenters today. So we'll move to the agenda item. I'll turn the agenda over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. I understand you want to deviate from the regular agenda in order to accommodate the presenters today. So we'll turn it over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. We'll still go first with Mr. Dave Dinko and permission to deposit snow removed from the hospital campus. Dave, if you want to go to the podium. Make
And-
the button.
And would you please state your name for the record, and welcome, Dave.
Good morning. I'm Dave Dinko, Dinko Construction, Virginia resident. I'm standing in front of you today because we do snow removal for the Essentia Hospital. And in the previous years, we dumped the snow up on, you want to call it Honda Hills, which is City of Virginia property. So I guess before I had the contract, people have been dumping there before me, but we've had the hospital contract now for 9 years, and we have it again this year and next year. So that being said, about 5 years ago when the city started to put their concrete and blacktop piles up on that area where we used to dump, we lost anywhere to dump our snow. So we came with a decision that I think Britt was here at the time, and at Elto, that there was a portion of city land up there that was unexcavated. And their agreement was if we excavated it and cleared the land off, that we could use it for snow dumping. So that being said, with the hospital being sold this year, I guess we're standing in front of you to see if we can get permission to keep using that parcel, which back 5 years ago, we spent about $5,000 excavating it for our use. And that being said, the city said, yes, you guys can dump your snow there. You know, you excavated it, and so here we are today to see if we can get some kind of agreement to be able to dump snow there again.
Britt, or Gary, go ahead.
Just clarify where you're dumping it now, or have been?
North of Range Landscape, where your concrete and blacktop piles are.
And you've cleared space up there for
To the west of that, yes, we have.
To the west of that?
Yes, so we excavated that about 5 years ago.
And you've been doing it there since?
Yes,
You just want to continue to do so?
yes, we want to have an agreement with the city that, you know, we as Dinko Construction can dump our snow there in the future. And I guess we don't want to have to come back year after year and have the same discussion.
Right.
And I understand it's city property, and, you know, we have all the liability insurances and stuff we carry when we do this, so I guess, it's in your ball court, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to continue, Councilor Baraboo, before we move on?
Yeah, I'd like to. Dave, you keep the road plowed then where you dump, or does the city do that? Because we've closed up that dumping site to the public now, except for our own use. I don't have a problem with you going out there, but you're going to need to work with the city. I think they lock it up now, don't they, Brett, for the general public? Because we were allowing people to dump concrete and everything. They were just making a mess up there, so we decided to close that off.
So we have a key to the gate. So there'll be times up to your concrete pile, it'll be plowed, but past and beyond that, we plow
Okay.
ourselves. And if it's not plowed, we plow the road in there. So it's kind of a mutual thing where if the city does a little bit, if we do a little bit, we're on board to do all that.
Okay, I have no problem. I'll make a motion. We allow Mr. Dinko to work out an agreement with the administration and our city attorney for use of that property for the purpose of dumping the snow.
A move to approve, to allow the Dinkel Construction to continue to dump snow up in the area by Lorraine's Landscape as previously done over the years, supported by Councilor Barnzelli. Further discussion, Councilor Johnson.
Here, the hospital's not sold yet. Just want to be realistic with you there, it's still us, so. My question is do we allow the option for other folks to dump up there too? I guess I want to be careful that we're not setting a precedent or we establish, because once the hospital goes to private property, now you're moving private property snow onto city property. And I just want to make sure that as we move forward, we're being fair and not going to get ourselves into a legal pickle because we're allowing, I don't have a problem with it as long as it's city property, but I guess as we're working through the, that agreement, Britt, you and Brian can make sure that whatever that needs to look like in the future, or if that's something we need to consider as a council to have other city options available to people. And maybe there's a fee or something, I don't know, but I just want to make sure we're being fair to other entities that are going to have the same challenge that you have up there. So for now, I think it's fine, but I'd like, as we're working forward, to make sure we're being diligent to make sure we're accommodating everybody who needs that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Paulson, any questions or comments with respect to the motion on the floor?
No, I'm fine with that motion, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich?
No, I'm good as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Dinko.
It's been a pleasure again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
And Bradley, if it's okay, if I can deviate just a little bit before I.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Mayor, if we could bring up Jody Grebnowski. I'm sorry, Jody, I should know how to pronounce her name. Our new library director. She just wants to give a brief update, and we can get her back on her way if that's possible, please.
Please come forward. Thank you very much. And again, welcome aboard for your first committee of the whole meeting and your presentation and library update. And just for the record, for the general public, so they get to know you, please state your name for the record. And again, welcome.
Right. Good morning. I'm Jody Carlson Grebnowski, and I started a week ago as the director of the Virginia Public Library. And I just wanted to come and say we've had a busy week. I do have some information for you, mainly because we are still closed to the public, but you can still use the library. So I have stuff about new library items, what you can use for curbside pickup, which is going really well, and ebooks and audio. And Stephanie, one of the children's librarian, put this together so everybody could have a handout. So far, I have lots of questions, but I just want to say thank you. It's been a really busy first week, and it's been amazing answering like just logistic questions. But I do have a request of all of you. You have my email. Please use it. I'm in gathering mode right now, like what's working, what's not working, what would you like to see? We are hoping to do some more outreach. We're going to talk about the logistics of that tomorrow. Yes, it's already Tuesday, so. But yeah, so I just want to say thank you. If you have any questions I can answer right now, I will be more than happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that you meet the Parkview principal back there, correct? Yep, there's a good partnership to start right there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Paulson, any questions or suggestions at this point in time for our new library director?
Welcome, and thank you.
I think we cut you off there, Councilor Paulson. Would you please repeat?
I don't have any questions. Welcome to.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. I also would like to be. I can't wait to meet you in person. I have for you.
Okay, thank you. I think if we have any questions or comments or concerns, the normal course of practice for us to go through our city administrator who allay any of our questions or concerns or suggestions for you to consider as the department head. So thank you for coming and thank you for giving us an update. And again, welcome aboard.
Thank you. I will leave these so people can take them, and it's just has a website or has a QR code that you take with your picture with your phone, or you can use there's a website. So.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
So then if it's okay, if we can move up, number 10, Sheena Stefanich from Rockridge Schools regarding the parent school bus loading, unloading plans at Parkview School. There is a new map that was distributed today. And we do have Sheena here in the audience, so if you want to come on up.
Thank you. Sheena, would you please come up? And for the record, please state your name and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Perfect. Thank you, councilors and Mayor Cuffey. My name is Sheena Stefanich. I am the Parkview Learning Center principal. This is my first year in that job. And I'm coming here today to hope that you will help us out a little bit during these times of COVID. We're struggling on a normal year with our traffic flow with buses and parent drop-off. The school district has asked our parents if they're able to and willing to drop off their students at school, to do that to alleviate the number of students on the bus and the social distancing and such. And with that being said, our parent drop-off and our bus loop kind of cross each other. So I have staggered at the Parkview our drop-off doors onto the south side of our building, which is between the college and our building. So I've staggered those drop-offs by door so that our students are coming in multiple doors and we're better able to social distance them. And with that being said, I'm asking my parents to then drive along that south side of the building. And if I have them come in the Parkview entrance, which is where we normally would have parents enter, the buses are going like this, or coming out like this, and the parents are going like this. So they're crossing each other. And it in the past years has caused traffic back up into the intersection, into the stoplight. And so what I'm asking today, and hoping that you'll work with me, is that if you'll allow me, my parents, families, to enter through the park and drive straight in to the baseball fields, turn at the baseball fields, and come in the back way through our, around the back part of Parkview, through the parking lots, along our fire road, so that when they're exiting out our exit, they're exiting with the buses, not against the buses, entering against the buses. So the map that I drew today, the old one that you had the bus loop on it, which I know was a little bit confusing, which is why I drew a new map. This map also has the drop-off doors for my different groups of students so that you can see that I've staggered them by door. And I guess I'll open it up if there's anybody that has questions.
Yeah, Shana, I do have one question. First of all, we'll have to find out, we'll have to change the one-way, correct, Brian, in the park? I don't see that as a problem temporarily while this COVID is going on, but also we'll have to talk to our Public Works Department, because I don't believe they always plow that early enough in the morning to get to you. We'd have to work out something with our Public Works Department to make sure that gets plowed early in the morning. Unless it does, Brian, I don't know for sure. I don't think it does. It's one of the last places to get plowed. So we'd have to work out, unless the school has plows, which I don't think they have big enough ones to do that.
So in the past, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, thank you. As a teacher, I used to park in that back parking lot. The loop part was not always plowed, but that main road part, I don't know that I've ever seen it not plowed in the morning for me to enter, but I'm not sure if that was the city that did it or if it was the school plow that made the one pass. I'm, like I said, I'm not sure how that works, but the loop part wasn't always plowed when I went through there, but the main part wasn't. I do understand, Mr. Baraboo, that is going to be a change in the one-way, so, which is why I'm here.
And the school would have the responsibility from your property for plowing, not the city, so make that understood.
Yep,
But I think we can make arrangements, Brett, you can work with that with the school. That would be my recommendation, and Public Works and the Park Department to make this a reality for the school until such time as you're not needing it any longer. That would be my recommendation, and I don't think there's a problem there.
Sheena, is there gonna be a PM pickup then, too?
no, this is only for morning drop-off. It's only between the hours of 7:45 and 8:05, because I have to open up our fire gates for this to work, because we have fire gates, because they actually drive through what is the new existing playground, so we are not playing on the playground in the morning as well. So this is just going to be our morning drop-off. Our pickup is going to be a different system, and I'm staggering that by time, so that hopefully parents are gone before buses leave.
All right, thank you.
As a user of your system regularly, I got a couple questions. I have a concern about the stacking of the cars on 9th Avenue turning left into the park. I'm concerned that backup on a busy morning is going to back up to the stoplight and backwards. Looking at this, having played the car game in the morning and the afternoon, which is, you're right, it's terrible. I hope we can come up with a better long-term solution, because everybody at 8:02 is in a hurry to get to their 8 o'clock job because they had to wait to drop their kids off because they didn't plan properly. And that's what it comes down to. What I'd like to see is entering through Parkview, and then the stacking for getting out of the park would happen into the park instead of onto the streets. So maybe that's just a discussion that can be had with public safety, the police. So that's my concern for that, is having, because the stacking occurs at the light, but it's very controlled there. And my concern is that the park entrance, and again, it could be signed differently. We can do something up there. So that would be my concern there. The other thing is, you've got 4 doors labeled. When I dropped off, usually I parked and walked in. Is that still an option, or is that not going to be an option this year?
We are not allowing visitors into our building because of COVID. So when we're doing the drop-off, it's actually, I have staff at each door taking those kids into the building.
So my 1-year-old, I have to, or my first grader, I have to get out of my car and open the door, child safety locks. So how is that going to work? Because I need to get out to let her out so that.
Yep. And it'll be a one-way, so, and I know this is gonna have to be tweaked. I mean, that's with everything that we're having to change because of COVID. But I foresee the ability to do that.
Okay.
Especially at her door, because your daughter is gonna be dropped off. That is the parking lot area. I know on this map, because
Okay.
of the maps that are available online right now, it
Yeah.
doesn't have that parking lot, but there is that parking lot available.
Okay.
And
Right.
if you'll allow me just one thing.
Absolutely.
What you were describing, entering into our park view and going back, was the first plan that I actually had, because it didn't cause me to come and ask for the one-way to be changed. My concern there, and the reason that I changed it, is because as my buses are exiting, those cars are crossing to go this way, so it was like a big old X, and I have probably 70% of my parent family population dropping off, so.
And that's, though there were mornings, depending on when we got there, but we always got there early enough where it was in and out. But there's been times where, as the cars are lined up, there's 4 cars coming down each aisle, and then there's a bus trying to get in, and that mom or dad who's late is trying to sneak in. So the whole setup is not designed for success. So, and I have no problem with the way it is. I just would like that discussion to happen to see if there's a better way, and then maybe long-term, there's a better way of doing this, because I don't foresee social distancing and those kind of challenges going away anytime soon. So I appreciate your work on this, and good luck with your first year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Bearable?
Yeah, I have another suggestion. If we can do that, in the winter months, we don't get a lot of parking along the west side where the greenhouse and stuff is. Send out a flyer to tell most of your people to, if they can, come down from the north, and then they have a right-hand turn. They don't have to worry about the lights or anything, and we can leave that parking lane open with no parking for the winter months along that particular edge there, and you got basically two widths, so cars can still get by that want to go to the south. That would be another suggestion, but work that out with our Park and Rec and Public Works Department, because then you won't have to worry about crossing traffic to go to the left.
I'm happy to do that as well.
Counselor Barnzelli?
Thank you, Mayor. For 2 years, I've left my grandson and granddaughter off there in the morning. I'll tell you, that's a place to check if you have a weak heart, or because it is, it's congested as ever.
It is,
And
it's a problem.
Worse in the winter because there's snow. The buses, whoever designed that exit of that,
I don't know.
they should change it. But it's a good deal, like it sounds like it'll work good. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Paulson, any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I think the plan looks pretty as decent as it could. I guess I was concerned, like Councilor Johnson, about that stacking on 9th. But if a plan could be put together just so that it's safe in case kids are actually crossing the road. If I don't know how many kids actually walk, I'm sure not many, but just so that there's, maybe some safety measures discussed there, I would appreciate that for sure.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Beyondich?
I'm good at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll throw my 2 cents in. I'm fine with the plan. You work it out with our Park and Rec Director. Whatever needs to be done, we should accommodate you based upon these trying times. So thank you very much. Are we looking for a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion that we allow the Parkview School principal to work out with our staff between Park and Rec and the Public Works parking mechanism with an agreement to do that.
I'll support.
A moved by Counselor Bearable and supported by Counselor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Johnson has another comment.
I will move to reverse the traffic flow for the school year only, so that doesn't need to come back to us. So for a temporary change of traffic flow moving forward.
Support.
Okay, moved by Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Freely. Further discussion quickly. Is that going to be an issue notifying the public now of this change for the school year? I should be okay? All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, we'll go back to number 2, Bradley Peterson from Flaherty and Hood regarding the update on the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. And give me a second while I get this up and running.
Morning, Mr. Peterson.
Morning, Mr. Mayor and councilors. It's good to see you all.
Good to see you here in person.
Technology issues, as you've seen.
Not a problem.
If you just hit the arrow, it should,
Aces.
and there they can see.
Very good. Again, thank you for having me up. It's good to be here. My name is Bradley Peterson. I'm an attorney with the firm of Flaherty and Hood in St. Paul, and we do the legislative advocacy and organizational management for the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. And so this is our yearly effort to get out and visit as many of our cities as we can. Obviously, in this environment, it's been a little bit trying, and we've gotten a little bit of a late start due to a contentious end of regular session and two fairly non-productive special sessions at the legislature. So we've got a lot to contend with. Just a little bit of a reminder of who the coalition is. Over 100 cities outside of the 7-county metro area working on issues related to local government aid and property taxes, economic development, annexation and land use, transportation, environment and energy, and then finally labor and employment. Obviously, COVID-19, when it sort of hit Minnesota, was right in the middle of our legislative session, sort of shattered all of the expectations. We were thinking that we were going into a short session with a surplus, and that the main job, at least from our perspective of the legislature, would be to pass a bonding bill. Obviously, in reality, there are no in-person meetings, 3 special sessions and counting, surplus for this current biennium evaporated and is now a $2.4 billion deficit. The battle over the apportionment of the federal aid, and then obviously towards the end of May and early June, all of the issues surrounding the civil unrest down in the Twin Cities. So a lot going on and a lot that we, when we started the year, were not necessarily expecting. In fact, really the last normal day was our legislative day down in St. Paul. It was March 11th, and it was that evening as we're walking into dinner at Mancini's that we hear that the NBA has canceled their season, and then it was, boom, boom, boom from there. So it very much has changed how we do things. So going into session, our goals were a bonding bill of at least $1.5 billion with supporting basic infrastructure and projects, local projects around the state, advance the discussion around local government aid and adding inflation and population growth into the appropriation on a yearly basis so we don't have to keep coming back to the legislature hat in hand, build on our child care progress from 2019, and then advance our strategy on some environment things. Obviously, now things switched. Large bonding bill is still a priority and still remains a priority as the legislature has not been able to accomplish that, dealing with then all the fallout from the COVID and that sort of thing. So I'll get into a little more detail. One of the things that we did do at the coalition was we created a number of resources on our website to help cities navigate. We hosted 4 labor and employment webinars to help city staff navigate all of the labor and employment issues that now come with our new reality. We hosted a webinar on the state budget and COVID and what that would mean. I think that was in April. And we did this all while surveying our city leaders, to see what are the issues that you're concerned about, what are the types of things that your city is doing to respond, how can we help you during this time. And then we also had a meeting with Governor Walz via Zoom. Again, I think it was in April or May. So the CARES Act stuff, that was really one of the main things that I ended up spending most of my time on towards the end of the regular session and into June. I won't belabor the discussion too much other than to maybe use this chart to illustrate kind of what some of the challenge had been. The state had been allocated a certain amount of money for local governments, lots of discussion and contention around what should be the distribution of those dollars. How much should go to counties as a group? How much should go to cities as a group? And then from there, how do you distribute that money? Do you try to come up with some complicated formula that tries to assess what the need is in any given area in terms of their COVID outbreak at that time? Or as the federal government did with the states and what our state ultimately did for local governments, basically just on a per capita basis. Because what we came to understand is whether or not at the time your city was facing an outbreak, you were still doing a lot and investing a lot of dollars to prepare for and to protect and prevent the spread of the disease. And so our going into this was really, no matter where you are in the state, what size you are, you should be treated equally on a per capita basis. And so as the discussion came up, the Walz administration had some behind the scenes proposals that largely jived with what the House did. Their approach would have given much less money to cities and would have actually held back some of the money to the state for future use. The Senate didn't like that plan. We didn't like that plan. We wanted to get the money out the door. Eventually, through several machinations and special session, the Walz administration ended up distributing that money out to the cities in June. But again, it was an object of a lot of discussion and effort and Zoom meetings with legislators and Commissioner Bowerly at the Department of Revenue, governor's staff and such. And maybe if I could just, I've been asking cities, how have you been spending your CARES money? I mean, if you could give me maybe just a good, brief summary, that would be helpful as I gather information here.
Because we are one of the cities that has a full-time ambulance and fire department, a lot of our expenses were initially upfront in preparation for the looming pandemic. Starting in March and April, when everybody was trying to stockpile on supplies,
Right.
we were trying to stockpile on supplies, and the prices were just jumping up. So we had a lot of staff time and a lot of supplies time. And we've also had to spend a lot of money getting everybody ready for working from home. Telecommuting we were not any way, shape, or form ready for telecommuting. And so doing that was a large expense, and we're getting in a better spot, but it was a big challenge. And it costs a lot of money. In this area, there was no Wi-Fi hotspots to be found. Getting laptops was impossible. It was just a very difficult thing. But we're prepared now for the next wave of anything that might come through.
And you just add on to that, I mean, our advanced life support system runs 6 ambulances here out of Virginia, and that was a significant expense, that we incurred providing service in our service area, which is outside the curtilage of the city of Virginia, or outside the city limits. So we actually providing service to other communities in using our CARES Act money to make sure these ambulances have the proper PPEs.
Yeah, and it's been interesting, as I've talked to cities, it's been all across the map in terms of how cities have used it. I mean, you're within kind of the mainstream of what a lot of cities have done, but, they've done a lot of infrastructure upgrades and HVAC in their libraries and other city facilities, City Hall, that sort of thing. So it's, I think the money was well needed. Unfortunately, it came later, and cities had to kind of scramble to figure out how to plan, but it seems like everybody's figuring it out. So, moving on. Just some CARES Act resources that I think you're probably all well aware of by now. Bonding bill, as I said, going into session was our main goal. Primarily, we said it should be at least $1.5 billion of general obligation bonds. $200 million of that should be wastewater and water infrastructure, money to support the BDEPI program, which supports local infrastructure that supports business expansion and attraction, child care facility grants. This is something that we started to push to look at, for those communities that need a physical space for childcare. Is there a way that they can help get those off the ground with some grants from the state? Infrastructure support for housing, and then money for local road and bridges. From our view, the pandemic and the economic fallout makes passing a bonding bill even that more important. And I think it is a colossal failure on the part of the legislature and the administration that they have not yet been able to do it. I know you guys are waiting for projects. Cities all across the state are waiting for projects. I'm hopeful in September that they can get it done, but they need to get it done. Otherwise, I don't think if they don't do it in September, I would doubt that there would be a bonding bill before next May. I'm jumping forward a little bit through some of our items here, but certainly if there are things that you want me to circle back to, I can. I just wanted to mention the PFAS issue and use it to highlight actually some of the work we've been doing in the environment generally. So PFAS, and I'm not going to pronounce the scientific name, are pervasive chemicals that are linked to health concerns and found in water bodies across the state. Cancers, that sort of things. And these chemicals are, if you think of the 3M settlement, it's been used in firefighting foam, waterproofing items, Teflon, all sorts of things. So these chemicals are pervasive, and they're getting into our water streams, and what we're finding is that it's starting to impact communities around the state. And so we really worked on trying to figure out how can we deal with these chemicals before they enter the waste stream. That should be the focus of state government, rather than saying, once it is in your waste stream, you have to remove it, city. Because it's expensive and nearly impossible at this point to remove. And so we did a lot of work at the legislature to hold off some bad ideas that legislators had in terms of automatically making these things that the MPCA should do rulemaking on and start to move towards water quality standards when we don't know how they would be treated. and that sort of thing. And so I think this discussion will go away, or go on. But wanted to highlight it because I know on your agenda later, you are taking up the request related to the voluntary assessment to support some of the environment programs. And so this sort of work is what those dollars make possible. It makes it possible for us to push back on MPCA regulatory moves that we think are not supported by law, not supported by science. And so in your packet, there is a whole piece on various legislative issues that we've been dealing with. So those are the sorts of things that those dollars go to support as you are considering that. Childcare. Obviously, we did a lot on this in 2019, and we're pretty successful. And so coming into the session, we wanted to capitalize on that, create a new round of grant funding through DEED for childcare grants, and then also additional money, which we're successful in getting in 2019, to go out to the initiative foundations to work specifically in their service territories to support providers in terms of how do you run your operation as a business, what are the regulations you have to comply with, how do you make it successful, basically. And so those dollars all went out. We're going to look for another round of funding, and then obviously COVID happened. And so we've really been focused in that regard in terms of supporting the state's efforts to get additional money out to these childcare providers, both directly and then to communities, again, through the initiative foundations, because we found they're a very good delivery mechanism. And so we've been very active in that discussion. So looking ahead, right? I mean, this is really kind of the guts of what is to come. I think obviously the biggest issue is the state budget, right? So in February, right before all this hit, we had a $1.5 billion surplus that we were projecting for the next biennium. On May 5th, the state did what they're calling a budget projection, and they did it just for the current budget cycle. So the cycle that runs from now until the end of June next year. And at that point, they identified a $2.4 billion deficit. That day, May 5th, we were out saying LGA has to be paid on time and in full. In fact, a reporter had our press release in hand and asked the governor about it at his press conference that afternoon. Going forward, we're expecting that the budget picture will come into further refinement. It did a couple of weeks ago with another projection based on the work that the state had done in May related to next biennium. And so, they're projecting an over $4 billion deficit for the next budget cycle. So what are the options that the state has? Well, they could deal with the budget during a special session. I don't think that is going to happen. There just doesn't seem to be the appetite for it, at least on the part of the administration and the Democrats. And so that leaves them needing to deal with it during the regular session that comes in January after the election. The complicating part there is not only are they going to be dealing with the current year's deficit, that is also when they have to do the next 2-year budget. And so I think it could be significantly messy and complicated, obviously. And then obviously the governor has his unallotment powers, which we've all...
Fred, can we ask you a question as
Yeah,
we
please.
go along?
Yeah.
I'm concerned about how they're figuring out the state is this deficit that we're supposedly have. We're a year behind always on tax revenue. That, from what I'm hearing, the tax revenue is coming in at 90-some% or more of what's projected for it to come in. So how can they get themselves in this big a hole? I can see coming up for the next year because of COVID, but that's the tax year now for
Right.
2021.
Yeah, and so I think,
how are they figuring this money out?
Right.
Didn't the state get money also from the COVID dollars to put into that deficit? What did they get
Yep.
besides what they distributed?
Right. So the state had over $1 billion that they got from the federal government that went, to a lot of these business support programs, the medical piece, buying PPE, some of the child care dollars, those types of things. That money, my understanding, has essentially all been spent. In terms of how do they, get an accurate forecast in May, I think there was a lot of guesswork, right? Because what we have seen and it's all with a grain of salt. What we've seen in the months since is that the state revenue projections, at least what the state is bringing in, has come in above what that May projection would have suggested. Now, that is a very volatile number. It goes up and down even in the best of times. But it is one piece of data that we have, right? And so I think, it is very imperfect. As I've been talking to cities, they've been getting, their property tax returns coming in pretty good, as you noted. I think the sales tax is probably the one that has taken the biggest hit across the state, and certainly for those cities that have local option sales taxes. In terms of the real budget picture, and this may be why they're waiting to deal with things, I think there's a couple of reasons. We'll know more now that, we're getting to, past the extension on taxes, income and taxes that the federal and state government had that had to be paid in, I think, the middle of August or had to be filed. And then we'll also have a better sense from the counties what the property tax collections have been, both for local governments and for, the state's general business property tax, which, brings in almost $900 million a year, I think. So it's very imperfect, and that may be one reason why they're waiting to do anything really about addressing the deficit. I think the other reason is everybody's kind of holding their breath, waiting for the federal government to maybe step in with additional stimulus here in September. It sounds like they're still far apart at the federal level on that as well. So, I think folks are very much trying to figure it out as we go. That sort of answer your question?
Yeah, it sort of does, but we've got some inside information. We just happen to have people we know in particular places for taxes. And the sales tax has been basically above last year's in St. Louis County. So, you get your big box stores are way ahead of what they're paying in versus others. So they're catching up the ones that aren't putting in sales tax. So I just have an issue with how they calculate these things. That's my personal, I don't think they use good numbers.
Sure, and I think, hopefully once we get to the point where they're actually making decisions, they'll have better, more up-to-date numbers that account for those things.
Can you see, Brad, that we get some of those once you get the information? Can you see that you send it to Britt?
Absolutely, we will get stuff out as soon as we know things.
Okay, thank you.
One of the questions that we've gotten a lot is about, local government aid. What's going to happen with that? As I said, when the initial budget projection came out, we came out early and hard on it needs to be paid on time and in full. My sense is, my gut is, and again, it's all with a grain of salt, that at least, the July payment was made. I think the December payment will be made. I think what happens for next year is a question mark. But I think there are some tools that, the state has in terms of dealing with those. We have a rather significant budget reserve of $2.3 billion. We've got other tools in the toolbox in terms of accounting shifts and that kind of thing that the state has used in the past. And while we don't like to have them used, it does kind of help, at least in the short term. And so we'll be, I think, the major focus of our work, both for the rest of this year and then going into next year, is to bang the drum and make the case for local government aid that it needs to be paid, because you guys are on the front lines. You're doing your budget right now. You're making assumptions about what's going to be in there based on what you know from the state as of right now, and that the state needs to honor whatever commitment they make.
Thank you. And I have a question with respect to local government and the concerns I have for 2021. We're unique within the city of Virginia where, we had an obligation we had to pay for the bridge, and I'm sure you're well aware that there's $5.4 million still sitting out there for us to recover through the efforts of the League of Minnesota Cities, and for help us significantly as a result of that through our lobbyists and through legislatures, which I'll be going down in mid-September to make sure that we talk about the local government part. That's primarily why I'm going down there for next year. There's $5.4 million that was shifted to the local government aid account as a one-time payment for the city of Virginia for $5.4 million to recover the costs that we incurred over the bridge, which have no fault for ours.
Right.
So the concern that I have is twofold. One is that the $5.4 million may or not be accessible at that particular time, and that may be deferred in some other way. Or number two, that the $5.9 million, some change that we normally get from local government aid will be offset by this $5.4 million. Either way, the city is going to be in a significant budget crisis, And, that's a significant amount of money out of our budget. And where do we cut capital and personnel? And that's something we just can't do and to offset those costs. So I'll be going down, and I would appreciate all your help in that regard. But when you talk to local government, I wanted to highlight that $5.4 million one-time payment that's scheduled to be allocated to us in August of 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are definitely in a unique position in that regard. My gut is that, for those types of unique things that were done for cities for particular reasons, that those things will be farther down on the list of things that might be impacted in this general discussion. But obviously, we'll continue to keep an eye on it as well. As we go ahead, we know we've got the elections here in November. Unclear what that will do to the power dynamic at the legislature. Obviously, we have a Democratic House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican governor. Every member of the House, all 200, or every member of the legislature, all 201 of them are up for election this year. I saw lots of signs as driving into town here. And so, part of what our job is between now and then after is to help educate those new legislators and potentially new committee chairs on our issues. One of the things that we're pushing out this week is a candidate packet to every person on the ballot for a legislative seat that talks about LGA. It goes through the formula in some detail, talks about the issues related to childcare and economic development, broadband and housing. And so that'll be going out this week to candidates around the state with an invitation that if you have questions about these issues, please contact us. We can help you understand them and why they're there. Upcoming events, we do have a fall conference scheduled in Wilmer as of right now. I think there will be some discussions about what happens with that and whether or not that goes forward. We obviously did not have our summer conference in Red Wing, and so that has been pushed to next year. And then we've scheduled our legislative day tentatively here for January 27th. Obviously, we're all hopeful that we can be together at that point. It's hard to know what the state of the world will be in January, but we're making plans as though it will look and feel somewhat like a regular session and cycle. So resources on how to follow what we're doing. And beyond that, I just, again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here, your support of the coalition, Britt's work on our board. I think it's certainly, I think, made us all stronger, and I think we'll all need each other more now than ever going into the future. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We might have a couple of questions for you if you to indulge. Councilor Johnson first.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you on the childcare work. I would like, the comments I've been hearing from our local childcare is great. Now our facilities are good. Now we need help with staffing.
Okay.
The wages that our folks locally are able to pay are not sustainable for our market, especially in these times. So the ability to figure out how to increase the supplemental stuff from assistance, childcare assistance through the state, through the counties, ways at looking at, hiring a teacher. A teacher in a childcare center is required to have a 2-year degree plus experience or 4 years, and you can't pay a 4-year college graduate $15 an hour and expect them to stick around too long. So just that is a real need around what I've heard from our Quad City childcare providers is thank you for all the upgrades for the stuff, but now we need to figure out how to long-term get our staff to stick around and to provide that quality childcare. And then the other thing, I just need to do a little plug. If you have time later, maybe you should drive by our new Miners Memorial Entertainment Convention Center area and look at potentially booking a fall or spring conference here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will definitely need to drive by there before I leave town. And your comments on the childcare workforce issues are well taken, and I appreciate the feedback.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Paulson, did you have any questions for Bradley Peterson?
No, I don't. I really appreciate, oh, sorry, there's a huge echo, but I really appreciate all of the information. And just, I really want to thank you for doing such great work on behalf of our city.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich?
I am good, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other councilor have any questions or comments? Anything from you, Britt? Counselor Freely.
Thank you for all the information and all the work that you're doing advocating on behalf of our city. I appreciate it.
You know, I just want to say quickly, the first time that you came here, the first time I took a look at, you know, the dues, which I didn't have a problem with, but the environmental fund, I thought, why would we need to participate in that? I found out quickly how important it is for that to happen. So your work on behalf of the city's environmental area as well is been paramount and invaluable to us at moving forward. So we thank you for that as well, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You want to hang out just for a minute while we make
Yeah,
these motions?
sorry. To
Perfect,
piggyback on
okay.
what the next one,
Thank
this
you.
presentation. Item number 3 is approve the 2021 Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities dues invoice in the amount of $14,074.
I will move that.
I'll support.
Counselor Johnson moves to approve the 2021 Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities dues invoice for $14,074 and supported by Counselor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion?
Just one quick
Counselor
item.
Bearable.
I think it's imperative because Britt is on the board, so I think this is a great thing that the city of Virginia needs to continue.
Thank you. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And the next item is approve the 2021 voluntary assessment for the Environmental Action Fund through the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities.
So moved.
Counselor Johnson moves to approve the 2021 voluntary assessment for the Environmental Action Fund invoice. Is there support?
All support.
Support by Counselor Freely. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I heard two ayes there on Zoom, so, any opposition? Motion passes. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the request from the Virginia Fire Department to purchase ambulance equipment under the CDBG CARES grant partially, and then the remaining funds would come from the city's CARES funds. They're looking to purchase 2 auto vent ventilators and cases, 2 laryngoscopes and attachments, 2 Z-Vent portable ventilators, and 2 iStat blood gas analyzers with attachments in a total amount of $89,820.84. We have received a CDBG grant of $28,000 to help with this.
And the rest will come from our city's CARES Act money?
Correct.
So fully funded through the CARES Act program and CBDG.
Fully funded.
Thank you.
These are actually 2021 capital items that we'd like to purchase this year using CARES money.
Certainly. Certainly. Thank you.
I will make that motion.
Counselor Beyondich makes a motion to approve. Is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Support by Counselor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion? Chief Lewis, are you on the line?
I am.
Any further comments? It's been moved and supported to approve.
Oh, I just, Counselor Beyond getting it this time. Zach. Oh, okay. We will try this once again. I see that the video is off, so.
We can hear you clearly now, Chief.
Oh, okay. No, just thank you very much. That's all. I have to hop on another meeting here at 10, so I'll keep my comments very brief.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 6 is approval to modify the existing contract with EAPC for the MEC project to add additional B3 commissioning requirements for the building envelope, and we have Brian Silber, Park and Recreation Director, here to discuss this.
Thank you. Good morning, Brian. Once again, welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting. And could you please give us a little explanation of what this is?
Yes, good morning, council. If you remember, before the construction and before we went out to bid for construction of the MEC, we had to obtain a company or retain a company to do the commissioning of the building. This is separate from the construction of the building. The commissioning of the building is the company that comes in and verifies that all the mechanical systems and everything are working how they are supposed to, that they are energy efficient and meeting all the requirements of B3, since we are a B3 project. At the time, one of the items that was available to us to accept in their proposal was commissioning of the building envelope. At that time, we did not accept that additional cost of $12,000 for the commissioning of the envelope. Since then and now, we have found out that we either do need to commission the envelope of the building or do a pressure test of the building. And doing some cost estimates and everything, we have determined that the most economical route for us to go is to accept EAPC's proposal for doing the commissioning of the building envelope. This will keep us in compliance with the B3 requirements that we have. So I'm asking you guys today to amend our contract with EAPC to add on the additional $12,000 for the commissioning of the building envelope.
And it's within the budget as set forth
Yes.
in our contract. Thank you. Councilor Freely.
I would go ahead and make the motion to do so, as it appears that it would cost us more to do otherwise. And it's something that's going to be required of us anyhow. So I would go ahead and make the motion to move forward with that approval.
Okay, Councilor Freely moves to approve the request to modify the existing contract with EAPC for the MEC project and to add additional B3 commissioning requirements for the billing envelope in the amount of $12,000 as their support.
I'll support, Mayor.
Support by Councilor Baraboo. Further discussion? I think it was prudent for you to hold back unless it was absolutely necessary. So it's absolutely necessary now. So thank you, Brian. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Paulson, any further discussion?
No, excuse me, no, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Beyondich?
I'm good as well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Silber.
Item number 7 is review the school resource officer agreement for the 2020-2021 school year with Rockridge School District 2909, which would be located in the Virginia campus. We did add a 3% escalator on there.
And I think that was the agreement. We were looking at a 3-year deal with the escalator, a 3% increase, and the school is approving that.
Haven't got the official word yet, but we need to get them the contract first.
Okay, yeah, very good. Okay, so this is the proposed contract to present to the school. I think preliminary, they have agreed to do this over this course of time. What is the council's preferred action? Councilor Baraboo?
Yeah, I'll move that we send the contract from the city with approval from the city to the school for their approval.
Yeah, and they get more bang for their buck there because we have a school resource officer and community resource officers together, so they get more heavily qualified services. Moved by Councilor Baraboo. Is there support? Support by Councilor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 8 was the purchase agreement for the purchase of property from Our Savior's Lutheran Church. As directed, the mayor and I have met with the church board, and we have come to an agreement. And Mayor, if you want to take over how our negotiations went.
Okay, thank you. And we can publicly discuss this now, Brian, Mr. Lindsay. Okay, thank you. We had a negotiation session with the Our Savior's Lutheran Church board. There are representatives from the board to discuss the purchase for the easement based upon the survey. And of course, they were well aware of what the survey cost was. One of the individuals that sat on that board has an experience as an assessor. And we did proffer the recommended starting point that the council asked us to do, and that was immediately rejected. The church personnel thought that the appraised value would be appropriate in this particular environment, and so from somewhere above the appraised value, we entered into agreement to approve, and we came to an agreement that we would approve the appraised value of $220,000. So that was offered. They took it back to the church board. They did the proper processing, and they came back and they approved the $220,000 offer. So that's what's on before you today, to approve the purchase agreement for the purchase of the property from Our Savior's Lutheran Church in the amount of $220,000, which is within our budget.
In our budget, that's what I just wanted to mention. That
Is there anything else to
the budget, we do have Brian here to confirm, but yes.
we can confirm, Brian, that $220,000 is within the construction budget.
Yes, the 220 is actually under our construction budget. We also will have the additional closing cost and the cost of putting up a privacy fence along there per the agreement that we have agreed. All of that should fall within our budget.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. So the specifics, when does the ownership change? In other words, when can we move the fence so that, like, how long will that take? Do we know?
Per the agreement, we will be able to move the fence and begin work as soon as everything is signed. We do not have to wait until the closing date.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
And to answer further your question, Councilor Johnson, and Brian already is aware, and the agreement is already over at Our Savior's Church awaiting signatory. So once that signature comes back to us, we can begin. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Moved and supported? Okay, well, let's move it first before I get ahead of myself, which I've already done.
I would do that. I'm a member of the church, but there's no monetary value to me, so I guess I could make the motion to move forward. Correct, Brian, since I was not a participant in the vote or anything? I do not benefit financially, so I'll make the motion to accept this.
Councilor Berber
purchase
moves.
agreement.
Councilor Berber moves to approve the purchase agreement for the purchase of the property from Our Savior's Lutheran Church in the amount of $200,000 plus closing costs and construction of a fence within the budget that's been set for this project. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councilor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? $220,000, correct. Any further discussion? Councilor Paulson?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Beyondich?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Freely?
Can I just ask what the parameters of that property is? Like, is it 0.9 of an acre, 3 acres, 5 acres, 1 acre, 1.6 acres? Okay. And that's exclusively to provide the throughway to 12th Avenue?
Yes, the 6th Street extension, which will make the traffic flow much better for the MEC and increase the safety.
It'll be an official city street.
It'll be, yep, 6th Street extension.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Utility extension.
Yes, and the utility extension, water line extension.
Okay, that's what I was going to mention too, that that
Go
gives
ahead,
us a
Councilor
loop, that
Bearable.
gives us a loop for all the water and stuff, so we don't have freeze-ups and stuff going into that area, so that's appreciative.
Potential future development.
Yeah, and
anywhere in that
development,
area.
that's correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Once again, thank you, Brian.
Item number 9 on the agenda is review the resolution ordering improvement and preparation of plans for the 2021 street improvement project. This is the next step if we are going to move forward with the 2021 street improvement project. The list of the streets are on the resolution. If any of them need to be removed, now would be the time to remove them.
Okay, thank you. I just have, I just make one comment while while we're mulling this over. I did get some telephone calls about the program, about the street improvement program, asking why these certain streets were selected. After explaining to them, they completely understand that. The only negative that I received from a number of callers and people who came to see me on the street is that they were wondering why Pine Mill Court was the priority street and why that was added at the last minute. Why not another street as opposed to Pine Mill Court? And I just asked them to drive through there one time and take a look and see if that wasn't really something that's been neglected for many years, just like some of our other streets. And so that's really the only negative comment I received for the most part. I think people are concerned about what the assessments are going to be based upon that. And so hopefully we'll have all those ready to go when we come to the next step. Councilor Bearable?
Yeah, and I can tell a little better reason why Pine Mill Court was put in there, because for mobilization costs, you notice there's another Third Avenue project, so the mobilization costs will be held down when we can do things close together at the same time. So, and that's the streets in there were originally put in by the city, and nothing's been done since Pine Mill Court was put in. So it's, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, Councilor Bearable. Okay, so we need a motion. Councilor Beyondich, your question?
Thank you. It's not so much a question as more or less a comment. As I was listening in and had zoomed into that meeting that was held at the Miners, and I just want the public to know that they should feel comfortable coming before the council with any concerns that they have. They should be discussed and worked out. I just felt really bad that the woman left there feeling frustrated. So I would love to see more interaction with the public. If they have a comment or a concern, I'm sure a lot of them do, that they are addressed and brought forward and not just swept under the rug and we're going to do it anyway. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. And we have a resident in the audience. Boyd, did you want to address the council for this or some other later on down we're almost to the end of the agenda, so. Mr. Carborn, would you please use the microphone? Thank you very much so we all can hear. Thank you. Could you turn on the mic? Very good. Thank you.
I'm on. I was speaking with Councilor Bearable last week, and he asked me to stop by and mention my concerns, so in case anybody had any questions, they could ask me.
Okay, very good.
It's not going to take very long.
Is it related to this project here?
No.
Okay.
No.
We'll finish this up, and then we'll call you forward, Mr. Carblum. Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think one of the concerns was about the assessment during now, and it's really important to point out that these assessments won't show up till 2023, 2022 at the earliest, because it's done when the project occurs. It's not done ahead of time. So there is still 2 years, give or take, for it to show up on your assessment and to pay. So things could change a lot by then. So to take away that immediate fear of extra charges now, it is not happening right now. It'll happen once the projects get going.
We don't do assessments until the project's completed, and we know this is going to be a 2-year project. So I expect that 2022 is the very earliest, but I would almost confidently say it'd be 2023 that they'd be due.
Okay, and in deference to Councilor Beyondish's question, we'll certainly make sure that every citizen has an obligation to speak in their mind, come to the council meeting, or come have any questions, or find it, whatever venue we need to do to communicate with them as a group or individually. So,
And Mayor.
Yes, Counselor Bearable.
Yeah, and just to leave some people's minds on how the people were notified. Every single person on the list that lives on these streets or down the avenues, they were all sent a letter this year on this. We did not just advertise in the paper. So everybody knew ahead of time if they wanted to come and speak at the public hearing and the feasibility hearing, they had the right to come here. If they complained about the streets, enough members on that street didn't want that street done, it would have been pulled away, but we had no such thing at the hearing. So we did very good due diligence as far as the street and alley and our staff on this project. If also we get any more money through grants or other funds in this next 2 years, that will reduce the assessments on that property. We can still go looking for this, but actually, out of the $10 million plus dollars, it's $1.28 million is the assessed value. So it's a pretty good value for your for the money that's being spent on this first half. There'll be a second half of approximately the same amount of money in the following 2 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so we're reviewing the resolution, and you need a motion to move forward with that resolution, Britt? So we're looking for a motion to move forward with the ordering the improvement in preparation of plans for the 2021 street improvement project.
Mayor, being chairman of the Street and Alley Committee, I also make that motion.
Councilor Bearable moves to a resolution to approve and move this forward, supported by Councilor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Anything, Councilor?
I have a question, Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Paulson.
The question I have is, there is of a sheet. Will those be sent out to the residents? That estimation, just as a preliminary?
I should have mentioned, Councilor Beyondich, that there is still another hearing, or Councilor Paulson, there is another hearing that comes up. There's an assessment hearing before all the notices go out. There will be a final assessment hearing on this. Actually, two assessments.
There's a preliminary assessment hearing and then a final assessment hearing.
Yeah, there's a
And the preliminary
preliminary.
assessment hearing has to have the numbers on it
Yeah.
that we're planning to assess.
Did you get that there are actually
Okay.
two? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? It has been moved and supported. Councilor Friedlieb?
Real quick clarification, like on Third Street, we talked about this at the meeting, but I just want to make sure and confirm the fact that on a residential street that does not necessarily have residences on both sides of the street, but there are government entities such as the school district, the public utilities, the city of Virginia, all of those public entities will be assessed accordingly, as are the residents, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
To equalize the
That's
burden of the fiscal
absolutely
cost.
correct, Councilor Friedlib. We have to have an assessment in order to go after the public entities. If you don't have an assessment policy, they do not pay. But since we have a policy, all public entities pay, correct?
Right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Our final item on the agenda is review liquor ordinance updates, and I will turn this over to Pam, our city clerk.
Pam?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I spoke with Chief Mattson, and after reviewing the current ordinance code, it was starting the fine into the amount.
You're all broken up, Pam. Pam, you'll have to start over again. We didn't hear anything you said, so could you please repeat, unfortunately?
Okay. Chief Mattson and I discussed the liquor ordinances, and with the current of initiating fines are violations. It was, after reviewing, it was noted that the people or the bars would not reach the maximum amount of fines required because the fourth and fifth year are either the or law lights. So after discussion, we decided that it would be beneficial if we change the
we're broken up again, Pam. Did you go back to we decided, what you decide to do?
Mr. Lindsay is he a little clearer than I am? As long as he's there, or?
I guess,
What she's saying
I
is
need
we're-
we need some clarification here. We can't hear.
Your penalty, we're going from 3 years to 5 year period. So rather than a 3 year period, they have 5 years that we have the first, second, third violations.
Very good. And that's acceptable, Pam, with our police chief moving forward?
Yes, her and Chief Mattson have worked together on this ordinance.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any comments? Brian, have you been able to have a chance to review this? Anything that stands out to you, or anything that's maybe out of the realm of reason?
Thank you, Mayor. I have had a chance to review the proposed changes. As far as the proposed changes go, I think that they're appropriate. It seems like a good idea to extend this look-back period to give our local license facilities a little bit more of an incentive to adhere to the laws a little bit more strictly. Not that I'm aware of any large concern, but I think that's always a good motivation for our local businesses. I did speak with Pam briefly about some other issues that are outside the scope of what we're doing here, and I think the two of us are going to look at some of those things moving forward. But as for the proposed changes here, I've reviewed and I have no objection to anything that is proposed.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. Looking for some council action.
I will move the proposed changes, please.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the proposed changes to the liquor ordinance. Is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Support by Councilor Baraboo. Is there any further discussion?
Just
Councilor
one quick-
Baraboo?
Does this require two readings? That's what I thought. So this was the first reading.
Right. This is the first reading of the
This is
proposal.
the first reading, or next week will be the first reading.
Yes, next council meeting will be the first reading. We're just approving this to move forward to the council meeting for the first reading. And it's been moved and supported. We're looking for any additional discussion. Councilor Paulson, any more discussion with respect to the ordinance change regarding the liquor?
No, I'm comfortable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich? Bueller? Councilor Beyondich? Okay, all right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries, thank you.
And
Okay, Councilor Baraboo, you've asked Mr. Boyd Carbone to come forward. What is the subject matter of this inquiry?
Boyd can explain it to you. He brought up an issue, and I thought it'd be best that he explain. It has to do with a legal issue, correct, Boyd?
Well,
Sort of a legal issue.
Well, is this something that would be discussed at staff level with our city attorney or not?
It's up to Boyd. I said he could make a spiel if he wanted to.
apologize not getting on your list, but I had a meeting at 8 o'clock. I didn't know.
That's fine.
Baraboo, I didn't know if I'd get here in time.
Okay, go ahead and please state your name for the record, sir, and then we'll see what action we can take or how we can help you.
Okay. Boyd Carblum, and I'm your insurance agent on the Airport Commission.
Thank you.
Yep. And I was talking briefly about the, the grass strip out at the airplane base, seaplane base, where you've got the temporary fence across there. It wasn't run past the airport commission, so it's just a act by the city itself, correct?
Cities.
And in the insurance policy with the League of Minnesota Cities, the policy does protect the commission and it does protect both cities, but only when it is acting on behalf of the joint powers. So I'm not sure, probably good to run it by Brian to look at that. My concern, what I brought up is, I think that possibly the city needs to have airport liability added to your policy. You may have it, I'm not your agent for the city of Virginia. So you may have it already, so it might be a minute question. But as it stands with that fence across there, city of Virginia may be bearer for that liability. And I just thought that I should bring that up. And the other thing is, and the only reason that I had called Councilor Baraboo is another citizen that was listening to meetings. It sounds like you're pursuing the counselors going on the commission and just one person outside, which I'm on the commission right now and mine expires the end of this year and I'll be coming off anyway. Got different reasons for that, but you're adding on or we've already added on purchasing the fuel, so we're selling fuel out there with the two entities and having two counselors from Evelyn and two from the city of Virginia. You may want to look at increasing your liability limits because now you've got two municipalities. You're hoping that you come under the Minnesota tort, the statutory tort limits, but when you combine two entities like that, you're probably better off having dual limits. So you may want to increase the limits that you have out there at that airport right now. That way you've got statutory limits for Evelyn and you've got statutory limits for Virginia. And and the reason that I bring that up is, if you sell fuel, somebody has a fuel issue, could be North Memorial, you certainly don't want to see a helicopter go down, with occupants. You want to make sure that you've got adequate limits. Now, statutory limits only apply if it comes under Minnesota statutory. If it comes under that law. I do not know if that would come under that law or not. If something were to happen out there, I don't know how much coverage you would need. Does just doubling the statutory limits, is that enough to cover both entities? It would seem like having two counselors from each entity on the commission that you would have more exposure. Brian would be a better person to address that, but to me, as an insurance agent, it would seem like you've got more liabilities. And, you're going to be making decisions. I know it came up at our last board meeting. We got the okay from MnDOT to replace our the light that, the beacon, so people coming in fog or coming in at night, they can find the airport. Well, we had to push that off at this meeting and push it into next year because we would spend more money than the budget allows, which, to me, as a business owner, I would never make a decision based on that, but we were told we had to do it because you can't spend the money this year, you gotta spend the money next year. So you do that, something bad happens, somebody doesn't make it into the airport, and you got $100,000 in the bank and you can't spend $1,500 of it because it doesn't meet the budget, you know, does that become and that's the reason, quite frankly, I'm gonna get off the board. I don't want the liability myself. So I wanted to bring up the issue that you may need to increase your limits of liability out there with the two entities being a little bit more responsible. Could be the reason why there was joint, you know, a lot of the entities out there have joint commissions because I'm assuming that the cities just didn't, they wanted to be arm's length away from airports. I mean, not everybody understands airplanes, not everybody understands airports. You know, if the Hibbing Airport, they don't have any city councilors on that commission. I mentioned before, I go down to Cloquet quite a bit. They've got like 9 board members on that down there, and then they only have 2 commissioners that are actually on that, so then they don't have I don't know if they do that for exposure or not, but just thought I would present that just to let you know what exposures you might be going into.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carbo. I think this is something that, you know, staff needs to work through with the two joint powers authorities, our city administrator, the city administrator, have our city attorneys, the 2 city attorneys review this, take a look at it, maybe consult you as well at that level, and then come up to some kind of a resolution agreement before it comes back to the council. But Councilor Johnson, you had a question, a comment?
Mayor, since you brought up the grass strip, is that currently usable?
No, it's closed.
So is it an active airfield?
No.
So there will not be any airplanes landing there because it's not open?
Well, it's one thing that, you know, again, if you've got...
I just say yes or no question. If it's not open, airplanes cannot land there, correct?
No, that is not correct.
So a closed airfield can be utilized?
Okay, I'd like to give you 2 examples. Would that be all right?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Well, no, with all due respect, I'm trying to understand how a closed airfield can be utilized if it doesn't meet the Minnesota Department of Transportation guidelines.
Well, first of all, if you have an emergency landing, you can land any place.
Okay.
Okay? If you were to go up to the Tower Airport with a tail dragger that's got bush wheels on it, you can't land on the tower, you land on grass. Right now up at Tower, their grass strip, which is not a legal strip, is located between the taxiway and the runway. Okay? It's grass. If I fly down to Cloquet and I use a tail dragger and I want to land at the airport there and I've got that same plane, I don't land on the runway there. The Cloquet Airport, they mow the grass that is alongside of the runway and you land alongside of the runway. Is it a legal airstrip? No, it is not. But MnDOT has turned a blind eye to it for years because they know it goes on. I mean, it goes on at lots of airports.
So how far away is
It's kind of a tough question to answer.
How far away from our closed grass strip to the airport that is open that has similar spaces is that? So if someone needed to make an emergency landing at the grass strip as opposed to the actual airport, how far away is that?
It is approximately 2 miles.
So it would be a wiser idea to land in an airport where there's acres and acres of cleared property as opposed to a small strip next to a lake and a road.
Well, the aircraft that you probably read about in the paper about a month ago that crashed, that tried to get to the Eveleth Airport, and ended up short and had to crash out in the swamp. If he'd have had a mile more, he could have possibly, if the directions were changed, he could have possibly landed at the grass strip at the seaplane base, but he wouldn't have been able to make it to the airport.
And a question I'd like asked for future reference, Brian, is when a city appoints a commissioner, do they have the same responsibilities and liabilities as a counselor? Unless you can answer that question, otherwise I can wait for an answer. I just feel that what we're trying to do as a city is be more responsible, and just because we've done things this way and just because MnDOT's ignored it for 20 years doesn't mean they're continuing to do it. As we've learned with many of our things in the city, including what Bradley was talking about with environmental issues, things are being done differently. And so we need to, as a city, start where things are different and move forward. We can't keep going backwards to, well, this is the way it's always been, or this is the way we've always done it. So that's where I'm coming from on this, that sure that maybe it was okay to land a plane there before so you could get your floats changed and then fly back out. But MnDOT has been very, very specific that we cannot use that land, and they've been that way for at least 2 years. I've sat in on a couple of the direct meetings with MnDOT. Those questions have been asked, and they've been very clear about what their expectations are. And so that's, as a city, as much as we might think we should be doing what we've always done, we can't do that. And I think that's one of the reasons that's one of the reasons I'm comfortable with putting counselors on the commission, is because we have to follow government rules. And we are directly responsible to all of our voters, and I think the liability is much greater by ignoring what MnDOT says than what would happen if there was an accident following their rules. So that's where I come from on this. I appreciate you coming in, and I look forward to what our staff bring forward with recommendations following what MnDOT has directed us to do. Thank you, Mayor.
I think you misunderstood me, because.
Go ahead, Mr. Carbone.
The strip is closed, so anybody flying in there, it's all Xed out. We've got it Xed out properly, so nobody should come in there and land. You just asked me if somebody could land there. So I think you misunderstood me, and I'm not here to dispute what the city is looking at doing with the commissioners. I don't have an issue with it. It sounded like you think that I do, and I don't.
Okay.
I don't have any issues with it.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, I know Councilor Baird would ask you to come here and explain. I think you give us some additional information moving forward. I think that Councilor Johnson had a question for our city attorney, Brian. If there's something you can answer now, or if it's more reasonable for you to meet with our representatives at the Airports Commission and try to work through the concerns with respect to insurance liability that Mr. Carbone has brought to our attention. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. There are some general principles here, but what I would do is request a little bit of time, maybe till the next council meeting, to take a look at this. I know joint power authorities and airports all have special rules that attach to them, and I want to make sure that I get the council the best information. What I'd like to do is take what I've learned this morning and perhaps draft a memo that I could get to our city administrator to distribute to the council for the next meeting.
Well, thank you. I know that would give you enough time to come to the next meeting, or is this something that later on down the pike? You think next meeting would be fine? We're good with that?
Yeah, I should be able to get something together within the next couple of days.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr.
I'll give them copies of the concerns.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carbone. Anything else you'd like to add? Appreciate it very much. Any otother questions? Councilor Bearable first.
Mayor, I just want to clarify something. Boyd called me home and asked me the procedures to present what he just presented at the meeting. But he said he had a conflict meeting, he didn't know if he could make it. And I told him at that point in time, just come, because we have other items of concern at the end of our meetings. If we're not going to allow people to be on the other items of concern, we need to get rid of that whole section.
Oh, it's no problem having him come here.
No, and that's what we ended up discussing. And I said, you don't need to be on the agenda because you may not even be able to make it. And I just said, show up for the other concerns, which he did. And I appreciate it because those are exactly the concerns he told me. I thought it was worth us looking at for safety reasons.
Yeah, very good. Counselor Paulson, any questions for Mr. Carlbaum?
No, I appreciate you serving, sir, on the commission. I really do.
Yeah, thank you. Counselor Beyondich, any questions or comments with respect to this issue?
Right now, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we need a motion to refer that back to staff. I don't think we do. We'll just have staff take care of that. Thank you for coming, Boyd. Appreciate it very much, and we'll get this worked out somehow. Okay, thanks again very much. Okay, anything else that's under other items of concern? Pam, do you have anything you need to bring up?
Yes, I just want to note that there will be the public hearing for VITA at 5 o'clock on September 8th, just as a reminder.
A public hearing for VITA on September 8th at 5 p.m.
For the levy.
for the
We
levy.
do annually.
For the levy.
Okay, the public hearing, once again, it's September 8th at 5 p.m. And September 8th is a Tuesday, next Tuesday at 5 p.m., just before our council meeting. So thank you, Pam, for that. Anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up for other items of concern before we adjourn the committee of the whole meeting today? Hearing and seeing none, we stand adjourned at 10:40 a.m. Thank you.